see Angela here yet. All right, well, I will introduce the one and only Nora. Of course, everybody knows her, and we're so happy that she came here to do this APR training for us, which is really great. I can't say enough about my old boss, but it's fantastic that she's willing to do this because she's as great as she was a TA, she's as good a teacher. So, Nora, I'm going to pass it on to you, and I'll start sharing my screen as well.
Okay. Hi, everybody. It's good to see you all. I miss the people, but not a lot of the work, I have to tell you. We're going to be talking today about the ever fabulous spring adventure of doing your APR report. So, okay, Tony's sharing you're going to do it in presenter mode. Yes. And a copy of this will be available for you afterwards. So we're going to get going. And this is the demystifying your APR report. Next slide, Tony. Okay, why do you need to do this? Because it's required for continuation funding, but it's your opportunity to show that you're making substantial progress on the goals and objectives that you wrote in your proposal. And if you didn't meet some of your goals, this is your opportunity to present what your plan B is going to be, either how you're going to rectify that or modify the activities so that you can be successful. So that's why you need to do this. So next slide, Tony. So things to know from the start. The reporting year does not and never has line up with your fiscal year of when the grant comes. You're going to be reporting on activities from March 1st, 23 through February 29th, 2024. And your fiscal year, if you're a PTI, is October 1st to September 30. And CPRCs are September 1st to August 31st. So think of it more as like a mid-year adventure. But there's nothing you or your project officer can do about it not lining up with your fiscal. So next slide. So your dear colleague letter is really important. It has the instructions. There may be some changes on what you need to do. Read it carefully. And understand that the grant is actually awarded to the organization under the responsibility of your board of directors, which is why the signature that's required to submit is your board president as authorized rep. This is sometimes referred to as the Larry letter, and I don't know who it's going to be without Larry Wexler being there, but it's the dear colleague letter, and hopefully you all have it, and you all have the links to the documents that you need to do. So next slide, Tony. Okay, cover sheet. It's all about the details. Carefully follow those instructions, and it's those tiny details that will cause your project officer to boot it back to you if it's not correct. And we are unique in our region in that our project officer for the PTIs, Perry, wants to see it done before you upload it. And now I guess Yolanda, is that correct, Tony? Yolanda's asking to see him also. I think he would say yes if I could hear him.
It's Angela, and I'm going to say yes.
Okay, thanks, Angela.
Yes.
Hi there.
Hi, sorry, I was a little late.
I was on mute. Yes.
Okay, next slide, Tony. So the first.
Quick, is this blocking the PowerPoint, my view of you? Okay, then I'll keep it open. Okay.
Okay, next slide is about the executive summary. And I'm going to go detail by detail on the cover sheet in just a minute, but I did want to talk about the executive summary. It's that 1 or 2 pager where you give a brief summary of your activities. You do go into greater detail on your status charts, write it up as a Word doc, and then save it as a PDF for uploading. And you're going to do the same as that for sections B and C. You might want to structure it as like under project or goal 1, that's where you can say we trained a total of 750 parents at 22 presentations with the average score being blah, blah, blah. So that's where you can summarize. Also, if anything unexpected came up, or you had any new initiatives or activities that you wanted to do. Okay, next slide. We're going to talk about that shell. So the shell should already exist. You may be using a shell that was created by somebody else, your predecessor or others, or maybe you created it. Use that grant proposal that was originally written as a guide. So you review how the goals and objectives and outcomes, typo, align with that current status chart. If they don't align and they don't make sense, you can revise the status chart with your project officer's approval. And now this is just a little aside. Hint, 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 as you're getting ready to write your next proposal, think about how your goals and objectives can translate into a simple, concise, easy to do status chart, shell. So think about that as you're writing. And you're going to have to do high quality, useful, and relevant. So just have that in mind in the back pocket. Okay, so let's talk about that old cover sheet. Next slide, Tony. Okay, so we broke the cover sheet into a couple of sections, highlighting, the stuff that you needed to know. This is an annual report. You don't have to do your final report yet. That's next year for the PTIs and the year after that for the CPRC. So check annual report. Put your PR award number in. Number 2 is NA. You don't have to worry about that. Make sure your project title and the grantee name and the grantee address are how your project title is what you submitted, your grantee name, and that's block 1 of the grant award notice, and the grantee address. You don't have to do that unless you've moved. Okay, project director. That's where your name goes as project director or executive director, okay? This reporting period, 3/1/23 through 2/29/24. Any questions so far? Anybody got their hand up or anything, Tony? It's all making sense? See, I'm looking at my PowerPoint, guys. I can't see your faces, so that's why I'm asking Tony or Angela to kind of track that. Okay, so that's part 1 of the top part of the cover sheet. Part 2, next slide, Tony. Okay, budget expenditures. This is where folks get tangled up. The previous budget period. So you go to your last year's APR and what was in line B, 8B for current, that goes at the top. And then B on this one will be your current budget period, what you spent. Okay, so you're just moving the old amount up and the new amount goes next. Does that make sense? Hearing nothing, I guess it does.
I would repeat that one more time, Nora.
Okay, previous budget period. This is 8A. That was in last year's under 8B. That was the current budget period of last year. That's what you spent last year. That moves up to be previous for this year. And then 8B becomes this year's current amount spent. You're going to be working with your finance person. They'll go through and look at the amount of drawdowns that came and total those up for you. That makes sense? So you're just bumping what was current last year becomes the old previous, and then you put the new one in. Okay. Okay. So indirect, if you have a negotiated indirect cost rate, 9A, you would say yes, and then you would fill out 9B, which is the period covered, the approving agency, and the percentage. If you do not have a negotiated indirect cost rate, you would check no. And if you check no, you don't have to fill out 9B or anything else. Okay. So going to part 3, that's the next one. The human subjects, line 10 is NA. The data privacy is NA, okay? Number 12 is 12A is no, it's not complete data because you haven't finished the grant. And if no, when will that data be available? That's in your final report, which is going to be probably like 12/30, 12/31 of 2025. Okay. And then the authorized rep, as you know, is your board chair, which is a typed signature and then a signed signature before you can upload. Any questions so far? Is it sounding familiar? I know we only do these once a year, but it's easy to forget the stuff in between.
Nora, I have a question. This is Rosie.
Hey, Rose.
I just want to make sure we're doing wet signatures on that one.
I have not heard of people getting. No, I've not heard it be a requirement. It is a wet signature. They prefer it, but I do know in some instances an electronic version of it has been accepted.
Thank you.
Because I do know sometimes it's tough to track down your board chair. Okay. Going forward, next slide, Tony. Oh, let's go to the most confusing section. The project status chart. Okay. I just like that graphic. So next slide, Tony. So we're going to talk about the what and the how. Each of the project objectives have the performance measure that support those project objectives. So number one, those are, think of that as your, what was your goals? What were your, in your, you may not have called them project objectives in your proposal, but they're the big overarching buckets that you were working towards. And then the performance measures is what you did to meet those objectives. Those are the how when you accomplish, you know, your performance measures, the steps, the activities, the targets, that'll get you to your what. So how did you accomplish that? So the big over across the top is going to be your project objective. Think of that as the big bucket overarching goal. Okay, next one. And here's a picture of our most favorite thing, project objective. And then it says, check if this is a status update from the previous budget period. You do not check that. And when you upload it and put your PR award number in there once, it will automatically populate that one ever after. It's the big overarching goals. It's the what are you trying to accomplish? There's no need to check the box. Use your previous objectives and performance measures as your template for this one. Okay, next, Tony. Okay, performance measures, the 1A, the 1B. This is the how. How did you try to accomplish that project objective? The list of performance measures should reflect activities that are actually part of your service delivery. Measures and targets come from your previous year. So what you can do to start this is you can take your previous status charts, and if they're in Word, save it as a new document. You keep the project objective the same, you keep your performance measures the same, your measure type the same, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a second. And you can keep your targets the same. The only thing new will be the actual performance data. Okay. All of your performance measures will be project. That's the measure type, except the ones that are the OSEP, high quality, useful, relevant ones. Those are the program measures. And you might be wondering, I thought I ran a program, but the high quality, useful, relevant as OSEP program measures is because OSEP considers all of this the parent program. We're just projects, each individual parent center of the parent program. So everything is generally under measure type project, except for the OSEP measures, OSEP program measures, performance measures. Okay, Tony, next. Okay, so this is an example page. So a performance measure is provide ongoing applicable information to 25,000 families. It's a project measure. I didn't fill in the target, but I should have said 25,000 under target. And then the actual would be a raw number. So it's actually, there's no ratio there. It's just raw number to raw number. You don't have raw number and ratio together. It's either a raw number or it's an actual or target. Now, provide one-to-one, 1B, provide one-to-one personal intensive assistance through individual problems for problem solving to 1,200 families. So that you're serving 1,200 individual families. Project measure again, and 12 webinars. Those are basically widgets. You're counting widgets, okay? And we're going to talk about the ratios very soon, but that list of performance measures should reflect activities that are part of your service delivery, as well as qualitative outcomes for those activities. This is where you have quantitative performance measures that sets a target of trainings to X number of individuals, X number of trainings, etc. These types of targets would be your raw number. Then when you have the data at the end of the period of time, you can go back and you can say, we actually provided ongoing assistance to 27,000 or 20 or 2,000 or whatever. So that's your actual. 12 webinars. Okay, so the program measure, you do not need to include administrative or one-time only activities in your performance measures, such as hiring or training staff or designing a website or opening additional offices. If these impact service delivery, you can note them in the explanation of progress, but those generally are administrative and do not need to be mentioned in your performance measures. Okay, next slide, Tony. Okay, here's our friends, the GEPRA stuff, high quality, useful, and relevant. You know they have to show up at each one of those, high quality at least once, useful at least once, and relevant at least once. So under the measure type pull down, those are the only ones, those OSEP ones, that will be programmed. And you do not need to put all three of these measures in each of your project objectives. Some people do, and bully on you, no extra points for it. Okay, just so you know. But if you choose to, if you can, but you can just have, so let's say you have 4 project objectives in your shell, in your status charts. And you did high quality in 1 and useful in 2 and relevant in 3. You don't necessarily need to have any of those in project objective 4. You can if you want, but you don't need to. And those OSEP measures are always the same. You cut them and paste them into the performance measure box. Tony, next. Okay, here is the verbiage. This is for high quality. The percentage of materials used by parent and training and information center projects deemed to be of high quality by an independent panel or review panel of experts, blah, blah, blah. It is a measure type. The ratio is set, as is the actual performance data. That never changes. Okay, do not change it. Copy and paste everything, including the 93 over 100 and the 99 over 100. So that's high quality. And then useful is the same thing. The percentage of products and services deemed to be useful to improve educational and early intervention policy. Again, copy and paste the program measures in, and the numbers do not change. And then next slide, Tony. Here's our relevance. Okay, same thing. So you can see each of these measures come from 3 different project objectives. You only need to use 1. Qualitative data remains the same. But let's talk about these measures for a minute. You will have a corresponding project measure to go with each one of those program measures. So right after the OSEP program measure, you'll have one of your project measures that most closely aligns with the OSEP measure. So let's say you were using the one for useful. Your corresponding project measure is 85% of the parents who responded to the training evaluation stated the materials presented were easy to understand and use. You had a target ratio there of 85%, and the actual performance data was 90%. So if you have, this is where people also have a lot of questions. Under the actual performance data. So let's say your target is 85 over 100 in that ratio, because you didn't know when you established the target what the numbers were going to be. Your actual performance data will be of the 320 participants who responded to your post-training surveys, 288 said that materials were easy to use, so that equals 90%. You would not say at that ratio 85 over 100 unless you only had 100 people that were asked and 85 said it was high quality, or it was good or better. I'm going to say that again. Your actual performance data ratio is, if you're getting your information from surveys, from evaluations, from wherever, it's the number of people who responded, and then that's the denominator, and the numerator, which is the one on top, I think, is the number of people that gave you out of a Likert scale of 4, they gave you a 3 or a 4. So that then becomes your ratio. Don't say of the people trained, 85% responded, because everybody does not turn their evaluations in. You only want to say of the participants who responded to our evaluation is how you say it. Okay, because it would be awful if you trained 320 families and you only were able to collect 100 surveys back evaluating you, because that would look like you had like a 30%, 30% said it was good material. So please open this up for questions right now, because this is where folks get really messed up. Or is it clear? Is everybody clear on this?
Yeah.
Yes, I saw a thumb. I saw. Okay, so it's the actual number of activities or responses that you got, and then how many of them rated you, 3 or better, not the ratio that you might have put in the measure thing. So actually, Tony, we should be on the next slide. I apologize. There we go. So this is the, hang on. Okay, your corresponding project measure. Keep your corresponding project measure right after the OSEP program measure. Keep them together. It won't make any sense, or make it more challenging to read if you have 2A is the OSEP measure and it's not until 2D it's the corresponding project measure. So keep them together. Okay.
Nora,
yes.
Can I just interject for 1 second for anybody who's new or potentially maybe still not having this make sense? I know I've mentioned this before, but I think what's really confusing for new directors or anybody new to the report is, well, one of the many things that's confusing, but one is that corresponding project measure to the program measure. When we are writing these grants, nothing tells us that we're going to have this program measure in an annual report that we're going to need a corresponding project measure for. And so we've written our goals and our objectives and we're all great and ready to go. And then you go to do your first report and you don't know really what this means. And so then you're sort of backing those project measures in based on your goals, but you didn't necessarily write it this way, or there was no instruction in this until you come to reporting time. So if it is confusing to people, because it was for me for years, it's been confusing. But nevertheless, I think I finally figured it out. But if there are people that are still like, what are they talking about, this corresponding goal? If you're new to this, feel free to reach out to any of us. But don't feel like you're silly for asking, because it doesn't make sense at first.
Right, and again, I'm gonna go back to my little hint, when you get ready to write. If you can think about these, the high quality, useful, relevance pieces, and how you are setting your benchmarks and you're measuring up, you will, it could be viewed by some as an unfair advantage because you're already funded and you know that this is going to be included in it, as opposed to, as Angela said, you're brand new looking at it going, what are they talking about? But you can steer your next proposal to be easily converted into this, is what I'm going to say. Okay. And okay, so back to the next slide, Tony. So corresponding, so the next one. So I'm on slide 21. Okay. Keep the program measure and the project measure together. So if program measure is 1C, make your project measure 1D. If it's 2B, then make program measure 2B, make the project measure 2C. It's like peanut butter and jelly or chips and salsa. It's better together. Okay, next one. Okay, explanation of progress. This is where you describe in detail the activities and evaluation results from your performance measure. And be sure you tie each measure here to each description here to that performance measure. And there is a character limit. This is one of those things where you do it in Word, you count it out, you know, I think it's 5,000 characters for each, under each of the project objectives. So you have to be as concise as you can. But this is where you get to go into detail of where you got the data. So for example, on this reporting period, 7 webinars were conducted. They were completed on positive behavior tips and strategies, 3-part IEP webinar series. So this is where you can name and describe, say, some of your workshops. And then you can also say things like overall scores, evaluation scores for them. You can list them there. Of the webinar evaluations done during this reporting period, 90% of the participants indicated they were of high quality. This is where you can also include, and they love these, feedback or comments from the participants that support your data. So if somebody said, this training helped me have a really positive impact on my child's IP, OSEP loves those comments. Okay. Create them in Word doc and then paste them into G5. Actually fill everything out beforehand. And when you go into G5, it literally can just be a cut and paste.
And also, I mentioned one more thing. When you cut and paste, do it via your keyboard. Don't do it, Control V, whatever, Command V. Don't do it with your mouse.
Oh, works. Okay. This is also where if you didn't meet your targets. So let's say you had that target of 25,000 families to be supported and you didn't meet it. What is your explanation why you did not meet it? And what are you planning to do about it? If there's a change in activities or strategies, mention if any important factors changed. COVID came in and really impacted all of us. And maybe your targets were originally unrealistic to start with. Maybe there was this, you weren't staffed. You didn't have anybody that was Spanish speaking for 4 months. So this is where under your explanation of progress, you can say we did not meet our target on 2B. I'm making that up. And this is the reason we believe we didn't, and this is what we're doing to try to move forward and meet it next time. Okay, so that's your explanation of progress. Okay, Tony, next slide. HQUR, high quality, useful, and relevant. Where are you going to get that data from? So post-training evaluations, surveys. You could ask participants to rate the training by saying, was this training of high quality? Was it useful? Was it relevant? But OSEP has some very technical definitions of HQUR, which are fairly, those terms are fairly meaningless to families. So you can use more family-friendly language in your evaluations. I'm going to talk about that in a second. So, next slide. Okay, OSEP's definition of high quality. So it has to have substance and communication. So does it reflect best practice? Does it is it scientifically or evidence-based? What problem is it trying to solve? And then under communication, is it clear? Is it well organized, free of editorial edits, and appropriately formatted? If we gave those questions as a post-training activity, do you know how many responses we would get? Not very many. So does it contain information of, another option is, does it contain information of substance? Was it a clear subject? Was it well organized? And then under next slide, Tony, definition of relevance, which is does it address a critical need? Is it address a problem facing a target group? Is it applicable to diverse populations within a target group? So that's their definition of relevance. So next slide. Is useful. Okay, useful is ease, replicability, and sustainability. Is it easy to understand with good directions? Is it likely that the information can be used by the group that you intended it to be? Are there clear directions? Can it be reproduced in multiple settings? And is it likely that the product or service will be successfully used in more than one benefit over and over to achieve the results? Okay, next slide, Tony. Okay, I've done some thinking about how we can translate that into some family-friendly wording. High quality. So possibly on our presentation, post-presentation evaluation survey, an alternative to high quality could be, was the information presented clearly and was it well organized? Under useful, you might ask, did the information address your concerns in a way that was easy to understand? Was there enough information and suggestions how to use it? And then relevance is another alternative. Do you feel more prepared and confident to use the information you learned to help your student? So while it does not use the high quality, useful, and relevant thing, it's getting to what they're trying to achieve with that. The trick is, if you do alternative wording, please remember what alternative goes with which of the high quality, what goes with useful, what goes with relevant, okay? Okay, going forward, next one. So more survey questions. There's other on the web, on the separate website, Parent Center Hub, there's some more examples of survey and evaluation questions that'll help you get to high quality, useful, and relevant. I feel like I'm just blah, blah, blah. Oh, okay, so now we're in section B, finances. This is something that your finance person is going to be compiling for you, but for the narrative here that you will submit, you want to see, were there any substantial changes to your budget this past year? Do you anticipate needing to make any significant changes that will require approval by your project officer? Are you at risk for a large available balance? And were there any changes requested and approved by your project officer? And include the date of approval. Tony, I'm sorry, I didn't tell you to move that forward. So when you do that section B, you actually can submit a a spreadsheet if you want, but you still want to answer these questions in some narrative piece. Okay, so next slide, Tony. Here's an example of answering it. So we negotiated our first indirect cost rate, or our staff's back in the office and we needed to relocate and we're consequently paying higher rent. We've hired a full-time bookkeeper to take over major accounting. We've requested a budget modification, which was approved on this date, or we do not anticipate a lab. Okay, so you can say no, you can even say, make it as simple as, we are spending down our funds as we had originally planned and do not anticipate any major changes in the next year. They'll be okay with that if that's the case. Okay, next one, Tony. Section C. We're getting there, folks. Section C is the list of your current board members, noting if they're a parent. Note the officers on the board. You also may want to put in the role, the roles of folks that, related, are in related jobs. You can list them by the parents and the kids, and then have the kids' disability listed. It doesn't say that in the instructions, but I know a lot of people do. But they do want to see that your current board meets criteria. Now, if you are not at that moment meeting the parent majority requirement, is it temporary and you're recruiting like crazy, or is it an ongoing issue? If it's temporary, it may be one of those things where you have a board meeting coming up in the next month where you're going to vote, 2 or 3 new board members on, which will make you compliant with the parent majority part. Or if it's an ongoing issue, they'll probably want to, they'll probably be referred to your TA folks for support in recruiting. So be honest, but this is where you can list your board. Briefly describe, they still want you to briefly describe any lingering impact of your project's management budget or activities because of COVID, and any other information that shows substantial progress towards meeting your goals that was not included in the executive summary or the explanation of progress. Next section, Tony. So we hope this has been helpful for you. If you have any questions or feedback, or you want to share your draft, contact your PTAC. And then we're going to actually have a Q&A follow-up on April 3rd, where the project officers will be on that call. I will be very honest here. I wanted to have the capacity to have a free-flowing training here so that you wouldn't feel intimidated by having project officers on if you had some questions. So far you haven't had a lot of questions, but I didn't want it impacted. They will be on the next Q&A one, I believe. Okay, now I'm going to open it up for any questions, anything that's frustrating, anything that has always made you feel like this is just harder than it needs to be. Anybody?
I just want to say with, True has his hand up, but everybody just jump in. If you have any questions for Nora, don't be shy.
Yeah.
Be the first one out on the dance floor and go for it.
So True, how about you?
Hey Nora, my question's really easy. When you brought up that last slide, it triggered a question I had. In the board, we list the board and we have to identify which board has a child with disability.
Yep.
Do we need to list what the child's disability is, or can we just identify that those are the boards that have a child with disability?
I read the Larry letter. I read the instructions. It just asks, is the child between the age of 0 to 26? Because that's kind of important. It doesn't ask for disability, but I will tell you, going back into what the proposal says, that there is a representation of a variety of disabilities, that our role is to serve all disabilities. So it doesn't hurt. It absolutely doesn't hurt. But I think that came from, in the past, there have been folks that came from a very single disability focus. So they wanted to make sure that the representation. So you don't have to, but you can, and it
Okay.
wouldn't hurt.
And I know for us historically we have, but given the kind of where we're at now, I just want to make sure that if we had some boards that weren't comfortable with disclosing, like, hey, I don't want to make this public, if we just identified who had a child with disability,
Yeah,
we know for a fact like what their disability is, but they don't want it to be like public because
right.
Oh.
And I've seen it where they actually list addresses and email of board members. I don't know if the board members are aware that that's being out there. I know that those of you that are serving entire states that, does that reflect that you are covering the entire state or not? I don't know. I would make sure before I put any contact information out about anybody other than my board chair that it's okay with them that this goes out into the universe. So any other questions? Okay, I'm gonna say this, and if anybody repeats it, I will
Wait.
deny it.
Hold on. Nora, wait, before you disclose stuff, I just wanted to add one more thing. The status charts on the narrative that for each individual objective, right? And you wrote there's a character limit. Just to remind people that character limit is pretty low. So if there are things like testimonials or quotes or additional narrative things that you want to provide, if it's also too much to fit into the executive summary, but you really think it's important to get it to your project officer and to have it be part of your report, you do have the additional information
Right,
sheet appendix that you can upload and put them there. So just didn't want to, I mean, we've all gotten frustrated when we've pasted our stuff into the G5, now G6, and gone to hit upload, and it's like too much. And I'm like, eh.
and the punctuation, like like quotation
Yeah.
marks and stuff, look really screwy on
Which
that.
is why Tony said to use the control V, instead of your mouse right click.
Yeah. So
Anyway,
um
okay, now say the things that we're not allowed to repeat.
okay, I asked a project officer in reviewing APRs how often they got out the previous years to the current years and put them side by side, or how often they went back to the actual proposal as they were looking at the APR. And both of those got a no, doesn't really ever happen. So do with that what you will. I'm not saying that you're gonna write flights of fancy there, but if you have 26 APRs that you have to review for a program, it's a big lift. I know in our particular case, Harry really gets testy if people don't fill out the cover sheet right, forgot to do something. And why can't you people remember that? Because we only do it once a year. And the other thing was about the other thing that just kind of sends them around the bend is the actual ratio data for something, the corresponding performance measure. It's like, did they only do, or were they only going to serve 100 families? No, so that's where you put the real in there. So those are the two pieces that he will send it back to you. Check for spelling, check for now I know the spelling and the punctuation, forget that, especially with the explanation of progress, because it does go a little wonky, but check for spelling in your measures and stuff and your other thing. But really and honestly, this is your opportunity to show that you are kicking butt and taking names, and you're making substantial progress. So this is what makes them decide whether or not they're going to continue to fund you for the following year.
Jill has her hand up.
Okay.
Font and size, is it New Times Roman? Is it?
They don't care. That's the
They don't
only
care.
time they have a hissy about that is during the writing the application.
Okay, and no, you don't have to worry about margins or
Nope,
anything like
nope,
that. Okay.
No. Because basically anything that is like a narrative piece, like the executive summary, any of that, that's gonna be a Word doc and saved as a PDF to upload.
Okay.
So no, they don't care. Any other questions?
Nora, this is
Yeah.
Karen.
Hi.
Good to see you. I was just wondering, does it look different in G6 than G5?
I haven't seen G6. Angela?
I don't believe it does look any different. I haven't noticed any changes in G6, but I'll double check.
Okay, just curious.
And there's that always confusing thing of you've got the cover sheet up, you've got everything up. It's like, how do you get the thing to get the printed out so you can get your board chair to sign it? And that, if you stood in front of me with a gun right now, I couldn't tell you because I have to look at it
Every time.
every
Yeah.
time. Yeah. And it's because you do it once a year. So of course you forget. So this is a springtime activity. What a way to spend the first real day of spring is to talk about your APR, especially if you were centers that had to do the product review stuff. But it is the thing that tells you whether or not, tells OSEP whether or not they want to keep funding you. So it's absolutely a critical piece. So any last thoughts about this? Again, if you want to send it, you can send it as something for the TA to review before you upload it. Or not even upload it, send it. It's like we have 3 steps. We have, you can send it to TA for some feedback, then it gets sent to Perry and gets blessed before G6 ever sees it. So yeah, that's another step, but it might help you not have it kicked back from your project officer.
Karen, I just pulled it up just to look and it looks exactly the same.
That you can save and like save sections of it and just add another A1, depending. Good. Well, I mean, you guys are all pretty much, is there anybody on show of
So,
hands that has never done this before? You're doing it for the very first time.
yeah, me. Sorry.
No,
So
don't apologize. Do
So
not
I did have a question. So can you download it and then
download.
you fill it in and then, okay, all
You
right.
know, if you
No,
go
you
into
can't.
if you go into the Larry letter or the instructions, the
Uh-huh.
dear colleague letter, it has links there for you to download the forms that
Okay,
you can fill out, but those are your working forms. When it comes time to upload it onto G6, you can cut and paste from those
Okay.
working forms into G6.
so
So you
that's where
wanna
you
have-
get your board signature letter piece from that.
Yes,
Okay,
yes. If this helps you, do not think about opening up G6 and just writing it out there because it'll time you out. You'll
Yeah.
lose your stuff. It's there to make you just want to jump off
go
a cliff.
crazy.
So do it on those practice forms and have
Okay.
them, and then actually it's the practice forms as to what you will send to Perry.
Okay,
And Jill, since I know you've done the F2F report all this
Uh-huh.
time, one thing that's different is
Yeah.
that you literally have to add in your status or each of your 1A, 1B, 1C, whatever they are. You
yeah,
have to add those every time. I know with the F2F report, they're pre-populated and they stay there. but
yeah.
This one doesn't.
Which
Oh,
is why you want to get a hold of the previous APR.
Yeah.
And actually, if you can find it in its practice document,
yeah, we've got
you just
that.
save it as save as a 2024 version, and then you just dump the old actual data, and your new data can populate that. And your explanation of progress obviously is going to be different, but
Okay,
maybe not. Anyway,
yay. Okay,
Yeah.
great. Thank
Yeah.
you.
okay. Everybody ready to just pry this one open and tackle it? Okay. Well, if there's nothing left, I wish you, tons of fun with this, and you have, I believe it is due May 3rd, which is the first Friday.
Yeah, but they're gonna
Don't
need
wait
to,
till then. No,
Yeah.
try to get it to Perry, like, at
Oh,
least,
usually at least a week in advance.
yeah, yeah.
Tony, we haven't talked about that with him. He may be able to provide that direction on April 3rd.
Yeah,
When-
April
he should.
3rd. Yeah, he will tell you when he wants to, actually, he will tell you when he wants to see your draft of it. But don't, even if it didn't have to be blessed by the project officers, you don't want to wait until the last day to upload it, because, G5, maybe G6 is better. We'll have a lot of people trying to do the same thing at the same time. It'll become confused, and it'll just lock you out. And then there's a whole song and dance that has to be done to get it in after the due date. So don't. This is kind of like pay your taxes on time, get your APR on time. Okay? Okay, well, it was lovely to see all of you guys, and well, I'll be back on the 3rd, and we'll see if there's any questions that have come up in the meantime. And again, don't hesitate to reach out to TA to answer this. Tony, you're sending out this PowerPoint so they can all see it?
Sure, I'll send it out in a few minutes.
Okie doke. Okay, folks, have a
Thank you,
lovely
Nora.
rest.
Thanks, Nora.
Okay, bye.
Bye.